Aloha, it's Nicole with PTC. Organized by APSCC, enjoy this distinguished panel discussion on satellite constellations, moderated by Gregg Daffner of GapSat.
Hello. Today's session is our non-geosynchronous satellite constellations going mainstream. But before we get started, a word from our sponsor. I'm Gregg Daffner, and I'm president of the Asia Pacific Satellite Communications Council, APSCC. We're a 25-year-old nonprofit members association representing the satellite and space-related industries, focused on promoting communications and broadcasting via satellite, as well as other space activities via satellite for the socioeconomic and cultural welfare of the Asia Pacific region. Please check out our website, join our weekly webinars, and if you're a satellite person, then please consider becoming a member. And now I'd like to turn it over to my co-moderator, Christopher Baugh, who is the president of NSR.
Thanks, Greg. Excellent intro as always, and it's a pleasure. And thank you to you. Thank you to our speakers. We've got a great lineup today of speakers. Mr. Jonathan Hoffeller from SpaceX, Erwin Hudson of Telesat, Andrew Wazowski from SES joining us today. We may have a surprise mystery guest joining us later, but for now, we've got a great lineup of speakers and an excellent topic, which is constellations. Greg, I think what I'm going to do is ask each of the speakers right off the top to give a status update, right? Three of our speakers, all three, SpaceX, Telesat, SES, all have constellations. They all have skin in the game, as they say. I'd like to ask each of them current status update for their constellations is the first question. Where are you with deployment, planning? And then next, because this conference focuses so much on Asia-Pacific, impact to the Asia-Pacific nations. So it's a softball question, just set this groundwork right off the top, and then Greg and I will tag team some questions immediately thereafter. So Andrew, you're first in line. Please, could you kick it off?
Certainly. Hey, thank you very much. It's a pleasure to be here with you guys today. Current status of SES. Well, I think most will know, but I'll just remind you that SES has been operational with a global MEO capability since 2014. And in fact, we're very proud to say, and we say it all often, that our very first customer on the O3B system was Vodafone Cook Islands. So we've been serving the Pacific for quite some time. In terms of our next generation of MEO, we're absolutely doubling down on our investments there. Next year, or in 2021, we begin to launch our O3B mPOWER system. That system, which is fully funded and will begin service with a global capability, fully integrated seamlessly with our current MEO, comes online in 2022. It's going to bring to the Pacific carrier-grade throughput, extraordinary performance and flexibility for the customers that are there, and a network resiliency that our commercial and government customers desire, need, and the ability to scale. So there's a lot of features in mPOWER which go beyond the current O3B system that we think that the Pacific customer is going to enjoy, like the ability to establish in-country gateways, et cetera. So happy to talk about that today.
Excellent, Andrew. Thank you. 2021 is the
21 is our launches, and then 22 we start with a global capability.
Global capability. Excellent. Thank you, Andrew. We're going to turn to Erwin next. Erwin, I saw some news recently from you folks. I think you've had some developments. Could you walk us through where you are and time frame?
Oh, thanks, Chris. We've had a lot of developments, that's for sure. Been very busy. Just a little bit about Telesat. I mean, Telesat, we're a Canadian-based company. It's actually quite fun to pretend we're in Hawaii today. It's 20 degrees below zero outside and snowing here. So makes it, you can kind of pretend we're in Honolulu today. we've been around for about 50 years. We operate a fleet of 16 geostationary satellites. And about 5 years ago, we started developing an advanced LEO satellite network. We started out with kind of multiple manufacturers. We down selected to 2 about 18 months ago. And we've continued to work kind of toward PDR and a little beyond with 2 different teams. And we're very close now to down selecting to a single team and proceeding with satellite manufacture. Our constellation, our initial constellation, is 78 polar satellites and 220 inclined satellites, so about 300 satellites in the constellation. We spent a lot of time in the early days looking at, do we want to build hundreds and hundreds of less sophisticated satellites or a smaller number of more powerful satellites, and we went with a more kind of high technology approach. Our satellites weigh about 750 kilograms, give or take, so give you a feel for. I mean, I'm getting old now, but I can remember when that was a pretty good sized GEO satellite. It's certainly a significant LEO satellite. Our satellites have a 12-year design life, 2 years for orbit raising and deorbiting, and 10 years of operations. And they have multi-beam antennas and kind of supercomputer class onboard processing, mostly software defined payload for onboard modulation, demodulation. The thing that we used to call a hub in the Earth station is now a couple of modules in the onboard processor. And we have laser links, 4 terminals on each spacecraft, connecting it to all its neighbors. Our system provides full global coverage. Our goal was to try to get a gigabit down into a 1 meter dish, and we've achieved that, give or take, depending on exactly what part of the world you're in. Full mesh connectivity in space, and MEF3 compliant. So we're trying to build a network-friendly plug-and-play system. We've completed our system design. Our first satellites are scheduled to launch at the end of 2022. We hope to have beta service going in the kind of first quarter of 2023. And be up and running with commercial service in the second half of 2023, although to be limited primarily to the more northern and southern latitudes. We'll continue to launch for the next several months, and in 2024 we'll have full global coverage, including the equatorial region. So yes, we've been very busy, and we feel good about what we've accomplished.
Excellent. It was a 23, so 03, so Empower 22, you guys 23 into 24. Excellent and impact in the region. Thank you. Excellent. Congratulations on the announcements. Let's turn from the polar north now to sunny Southern California, Jonathan, who I think timetables are going to be a bit more aggressive in terms of when service will be available. So can you walk us through? We've seen lots of launches, lots of announcements. Where are you now? What does the next, say, 12 months look like in terms of service?
Sure. Great. And thank you for having me. Yes, we've been very busy. We haven't slowed down even a little bit for Starlink and for the company as a whole, launching the astronauts into space on several occasions, a number of commercial satellites and government satellites. We've launched close to 1,000 satellites already for the Starlink constellation. Not quite there yet, but it's hard to keep track. We're launching quite frequently. But we are out and running. We've deployed our service in the Pacific Northwest. We have not only residential customers, but we also have enterprise customers online using the service, testing it out. We call it the Better Than Nothing beta. What we're finding is that the reaction to the service is life-changing. People who haven't been able to get this sort of connectivity for their homes or for their businesses, with the extremely low latency that we can offer through LEO. So we'll continue to launch satellites pretty much indefinitely, and roll out service. So we'll bring in the rest of the United States online early next year. In those latitude bands, map all the way across the globe. So we'll be rolling out into several countries in the first quarter of next year, Asia Pacific, in around the same time frame, and then continue to add countries through the end of the year. we're getting really excited about the service. The demand is incredible, especially now in COVID times. People just need more connectivity. Businesses need more connectivity, remote operations, and it's been an amazing year.
Okay. Thanks, Jonathan. Excellent. So, so you say Asia Pacific, we'll see maybe some developments in terms of coverage in the next 12 months, would you say, or is this more of a?
Much sooner than that.
Much sooner. Okay.
Yeah.
Fantastic. Okay. There. So watch this space. Okay. Great.
Mm-hmm.
Question just for you initially off the top. So because you're out selling, you've had some great, this beta, better than nothing beta, which is always a cheeky names. I love it. Any sort of lessons learned? Anything maybe now that you didn't know originally by selling it, the service? I mean, we've seen a lot of interesting activity around your antenna, a lot of YouTube videos of people that are enamored with the technology, but anything that you've experienced, gained early days, because from users who, of course, they love it because they have nothing, many of them, or have very little. So anything is better than nothing, but anything you've learned early days?
I mean, we've learned an incredible amount. I mean, I couldn't quantify it or I mean, a couple things. One, going from selling launches and rides to space to connectivity. There's been a lot of maturity going on there as well. All the subsystems to support that. But I have to give credit to the team just making smart decisions and building an incredibly robust product itself. We'll continuously iterate. I mean, that's the way SpaceX goes, is we don't lock ourselves into a design for 10 or 12 years. We're continuously making the product better, both from the satellite side and from the ground terminal side.
Okay, thank
I
you.
got a quick question, Chris.
Yeah, great. Go ahead.
As a follow-up, and this is a simple one, Jonathan. Are you guys using intersatellite optical links on this first generation?
We have them on a few of the satellites, but it's not widely deployed as we build that technology. The plan is to widely deploy the intersatellite links, though. I won't give a time frame, but sooner rather than later.
Okay, and is there some reason why the other guys are doing intersatellite links and this is not important or primary for you guys?
Oh, it is. I wouldn't say it's not important. We can provide service without it. We can amplify our service. The challenge is cost. Deploying a constellation and developing the intersatellite links to make it cost effective, so we can provide a great low cost service, has been, like everything SpaceX does. We take that challenge internally, and we've actually in the past few months, you probably read in some of the other news articles that we have successfully demonstrated our own intersatellite links. So it's just perfecting that and then rolling it into the design.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, thanks, Greg. Question then for everybody, and it kind of just to start and go another layer down, which is the business, right? The opportunity. Now, you've shown, whether it's Andrew, you've connecting remote communities, and you mentioned Cook Islands and many other places, and Jonathan, you're selling to a lot of underserved, unserved users. What you considering the capacity, considering everything that's out there, you're three of, you're not the only three that are out there with this constellations business and connecting, whether direct to consumers or through cell towers, through village Wi-Fi. The question really becomes, is there enough business for all of you? We get that question a lot from those looking at investment, looking at opportunities throughout the value chain. And maybe back to Andrew, because again, you've been selling O3b for a while too. Is there enough, really, truly, for all of this? Because we keep seeing, again, they're not all going to make it, but there are at least half a dozen, 5, 6 plus, that look very feasible right now. And that maybe wasn't the case a year or two ago. So Andrew, what do you think? Is there enough for all of you?
Sure. It's an outstanding question. So I think it's important first to recognize that we're not all going after the same share of the market. In fact, I think the LEO providers, and I'm tracking this very, very with a lot of curiosity, looking forward to seeing what that looks like in 5 years. But they're bringing a very exciting opportunity, primarily for a consumer market. They overlap a little bit into the enterprise market. On our focus is primarily on the high bandwidth connectivity side of the market, right? To the extent that we overlap with the LEOs and the consumer side, it is that we are providing meaningful capabilities at connectivity to the telcos and the MNOs who are also going after that share of the market. And so we're very confident that in what we think is probably, I think it was measured at about a $6 billion annual market in 2020 around connectivity, growing over the years to at least twice that in not too distant future. We're very comfortable that we stack up very well against the competition, which is relatively limited. We've got a unique capability for that high throughput, high bandwidth, meaningful kind of bandwidth to carriers, MNOs, mobile backhaul, and so we're comfortable in that spot.
Okay, so you're confident that you'll be able to fill these satellites. There's enough demand for at least for Empower, given your business case, which.
Absolutely, I think that if I lose sleep over this at all, it's whether we're going to be able to bring enough bandwidth to that demand, really.
Okay, excellent. Back across the way to Erwin. Erwin, I'm sure, have built model upon model in the run up to all of this. Now your architecture is a bit unique. Are you confident and content with what the numbers look like in terms of demand?
I think I agree with Andrew that one is that I think we're not all addressing exactly the same market. There are different segments of the market, and I think that with the LEO with low latency, high quality of service, the data rates that we can deliver, I think we're not just limited to what's been historically a satellite market, but I think we're limited. I think we're opening up a much larger market. We try not to think of ourselves as satellite, but more as telecom. We started with a business plan, and we built our system around the business plan rather than the reverse, which the engineers love to do. I mean, we're not trying to serve the super low cost consumer direct to home type market. We are focused on the maritime markets, the aero markets, the mobile backhaul markets, as well as community aggregation models where we can come into small communities, in the Pacific or in northern Canada, for example. We can bring in hundreds and hundreds of megabits, a few gigabits of capacity, and distribute that locally, and be super cost effective, compared to alternatives. And I think we're building a system that can put down. We got our raw capacity is in the 15 to 20 terabit range. Our sellable capacity, kind of based on the business plan, is kind of in the 6 or 8 terabit range. But as Andrew says, that may be nowhere near enough once we get up and on the air and make these services available.
Thanks, Erwin. Okay, so you guys are quite comfortable and I think positive about the prospect, which is great. I mean, you have to be, I guess, in the early days, and there is a lot of demand out there. Last time I'll turn to Jonathan, then Greg, I'd like you to jump in with questions. So Jonathan, looking at the business case, and we've seen early days, we've seen the cost of the ground segment, we've seen the availability, everything else. It seems as if, demand is pretty high for this, right? So if I'm thinking about the business case and the demand, your models are probably showing, significant uptake, I'd imagine. Can you talk to just, again, the absolute business case for this? Because if given the cost of the ground segment, given where you are now, how much demand at these price points, and do you need to work with that anymore?
Sure. A lot to discuss on this topic. So, having rolled out service, we have seen an overwhelming amount of demand across the globe, to the point where we're trying to figure out how best to triage that. I do want to make a clarification, though. While we have been very public about our direct-to-consumer product offering, if we can solve the direct-to-consumer product offering and we do it well, it makes it incredibly, you can transition that to the enterprise. we are. I think it'd be a mistake to say that we are not servicing the enterprise market, because we're certainly in conversations with folks in every vertical. They are excited about our platform, the cost associated with it, the fact that we're available now, and so yeah, there's a huge amount. I'll agree with whatever the other two speakers have said. I think that the demand for connectivity is somewhat insatiable. I think we're in an interesting time now here with COVID, with the amount of throughput going through the internet. You know, average businesses and users are now having to do everything remotely, and so we're seeing an uptick in just raw throughput. So as we roll out our various data plans, making sure that the service is taking into account this new way of life. And so kind of in short, two things. One is we're addressing all the markets. We're very public about the consumer bit. We're doing enterprise, we're doing government work, and there's plenty of demand.
Okay, yeah, Greg, I think that's great, and I agree. I mean, the demand is there. I guess it's at what price and the back end of the business case. So I absolutely agree with you all. Greg, do you want to maybe jump in a bit? I could.
Yeah. Two things. First of all, I was a little confused though between Erwin and Andrew on the differentiator. I didn't really hear it, and I don't want to press you too hard, but I mean, Erwin, you said that you're going to go after maritime, aeronautical, you're going to do backhaul, community aggregation. And it sounded like Empower and O3B is serving and intends to keep expanding, serving exactly those markets. Did I misunderstand it? Andrew, would you say that you have a different focus than what Erwin was describing, or is it pretty similar?
If that's to me, then I'll give it a first shot. I think there is overlap between the three parties here. If there's an exclusive zone for SCS, O3B, Empower, it probably is in that very high carrier grade throughput capability that is meaningful to telcos. We're talking about multiple gigabits, you know, in some cases up to 10 gigabits in both directions from O3B Empower. That in itself is going to be meaningful to telcos who are looking to expand into new markets, meaningful to those who want to lower the risk of testing out markets, you know, before they, you know, put the CapEx into expanding their fiber dig. But don't get me wrong, please. By no means are we limited to that. We are absolutely confident of our ability to go well down into the enterprise markets with secure private networks that require cloud scale throughput. So that's where we want to focus. Staying away from consumer, of course. And I know that Erwin has got his eyes on some of the same stuff.
Okay, thanks. And Erwin, do you want to have a comeback on that?
Well, I mean, you use the word differentiator. I guess it sounds like we're talking about two things. We're talking about addressable market and we're talking about differentiator, right? So I agree that our addressable markets have, you know, overlap, maybe substantial overlap. But we do believe, we certainly Telesat believe we have substantial differentiators. I mean, our inter-satellite links, we can cover the whole planet Earth, not just the more equatorial regions. You know, we can deliver services with under 50 milliseconds, you know, typical latency. That's a lot harder to do from MEO and GEO. I mean, we've got some 135,000 beams on our, you know, constellation of satellites. So we've got, you know, huge amount of capacity, huge amount of ability to focus that capacity into airports and seaports and military bases and other areas where there's heavy demand. I mean, I think we have a huge number of significant differentiators, and so we're not afraid to compete, you know, if our addressable markets overlap.
It sounds good. I can't wait to see you guys in that market. Jonathan, for consumer particularly, one of the keys to the success of this, and we ought to talk about it for a minute, are the antennas. And I guess the first question that I have is something that I've talked to a lot of people about, is sort of an extraordinary aspect of what you guys have accomplished, because the non-geo operators and antenna manufacturers have spent the better part of the last decade working on and not really succeeding in getting a low-cost, consumer-grade, flat panel, phased array antenna to work in any affordable fashion. And yet you guys have come in, you know, and gone and apparently done this. So I'm just, without giving away anything proprietary, how did you accomplish a successful self-installable, self-pointing phased array antenna where others didn't? What was your secret sauce or your different approach?
I think so. It is a challenging question. It is actually one that we're continuing to work. We think the price points are still too high for where we need to go as a company. Taking the vertical integration approach, similar to what we've done on the launch side, we apply it to our satellites. We're applying it to our user terminals, the Starlinks that are deployed. Maintaining that vertical integration has been key. Contributed to great leadership. It's I don't think we have a magic sauce. Just like on Falcon 9, coming in and disrupting an industry, becoming the experts ourselves versus outsourcing. If you're going to the traditional vendors, you're gonna generally end up with the traditional products, and so by the other piece is speed. So I mean, time is money. So one of the things that we're able to do, so by being vertically integrated, we control pretty much three things. We have the cost of the product, the speed of how much we can innovate. You're not going to get it right the first time or the first couple times. This is something that you can do very rapidly in software. Hardware is a little bit more difficult, so maintaining that independence. And the last piece is quality. And again, getting back to time is money, being able to address quality issues within your own supply chain versus having to work through it with vendors. We do have a handful of great vendors across the globe, but they're providing the core components. We're doing all the manufacturing and assembly ourselves, and so I think that's one of the keys.
Okay, and then the follow-on question to that, and I think for you more than the others, although I think Telesat's also looking at this, and maybe SES. How important are government subsidies to underwrite some of the universal access kind of dimensions to rolling out service across the globe to unserved and underserved communities? How important is it to your business plan, or do you have other ways of addressing that you think will be financially successful?
I mean, the without the government subsidy, I mean, the business is very self-substantiated. So they're self-sustaining. They don't need government subsidies to keep it going. When you get back to your first point about the price point of user terminals or the Starlinks, there are a lot of government programs trying to bring connectivity to different areas. You know, the $4.99 that we have per terminal is very expensive for a lot of places around the globe. So where governments have been asked on behalf of their constituency to make sure that they get connectivity, and they're pushing funds, certainly an investment in Starlink connectivity, which is going to just get better over time as we launch more and more satellites. We believe is a much better investment than other investment opportunities for getting towns connected, or at least saying that towns are going to connected. The satellites are deployed. The architecture is there. It can serve pretty much anybody on the globe once we get all the other bits and pieces done. But the satellites are up there, and so taking advantage of that to connect as many people and businesses as possible is what we're trying to do.
Okay, same question for you, Erwin. Government subsidies support, is that important for you?
I mean, we've gotten great support from the government of Canada, certainly on our LEO project, and I mean, certainly, quite important. It makes it a lot more economic to serve the more disadvantaged and remote areas of the world, including northern Canada. We did announce just recently that we had closed a $600 million Canadian dollar agreement with the government of Canada, where the government of Canada will help fund a large pool of Telesat LEO capacity, and we will offer that capacity to service providers in northern Canada at a highly discounted rate, which makes it super affordable for these small, remote, and isolated communities. And we think that's a great model that could be duplicated around the world. I mean, the beauty of LEO, unlike GEO, is that we're sort of everywhere, whether we like it or not. And so I think it's going to be a great deal for the remote areas of the Pacific Islands, the remote areas of Africa and Asia. I think are going to benefit tremendously, and with government support, local government support and international government support, I think we can help put the infrastructure in those areas so we can bring in the capacity they need and distribute it locally. And I think it'll have a huge impact on local economics and education and safety and other factors. So we're certainly looking to see if we can reproduce that model around the world.
Okay, thank you. Andrew, you want to comment?
Sure. So of course, the mPOWER program, future MEO, is fully funded, being manufactured as we speak, on schedule. So we certainly don't need any government subsidies for that. But to the extent that governments, FCC and otherwise, are prioritizing connecting their citizens, we support that. And as you know, O3B was connecting the other 3 billion. And we're very proud of what we've done over the years to make that possible. Certainly along the way, we've diversified, right? We serve a range of markets and applications, but we haven't lost sight of that objective. And with O3B mPOWER, we are going to continue to do that. We've made and will continue to, I believe, bring meaningful connectivity options to the Pacific Islands, to Africa, where we've done a great job in the past, and the rest of the world. So we absolutely support that, and we'll be supporting those who are aligned with it.
Okay, tag team.
Greg, so just thank you. That was going to be a question I was going to talk on subsidies. So maybe to ask a more direct way, and this will be the last thing. Yes or no question. Does the business case for each of you close without subsidies? Andrew first.
Yes. I mean, the business case is closing now, and when we combine our MEO program, O3B included, with the larger SCS constellation of GEO, we're finding that it's making it possible for us to create new solutions, new products, and open up markets for us that we haven't been able to get into before. So we're feeling very comfortable about our business case and what we can do for our customers. Okay.
Erwin, simple yes, no. What do you think? Can you close the business case without subsidies?
Yes, but I think that the end state might look different than it would otherwise look, but certainly yes.
You can. Okay. Jonathan, favorite topic. What do you?
Yes.
Yes.
You want the one word answer?
One word answer. I got what I asked for. Okay. Thank you. That was very eloquent. Thank you. Turning quickly to another topic that we get asked a lot as analysts, and we're all here promoting non-GEO, so it's MEO and LEO, anything not station kept set up in GEO. But as two of you have GEO fleets, and one of you launches a lot of GEO satellites, the GEO business is in state of flux at the moment. And I guess the question really becomes, if you, I mean, I know, for example, Andrew, your company, it's a multi-band, multi-orbit strategy, and I get that. But once all of this capacity is online and others that aren't on this panel have capacity online, and it comes, other than broadcasting big beams to video, is there much, what's going to happen to GEO, especially if you're a user in the Pacific, maybe you've invested in telecom infrastructure in the Asia Pac region? Where does that leave that market long term? Jonathan, you're up front here first. If you could kind of put your thinking head on for GEO, really just GEO.
I was actually going to defer to the GEO operators. We are seeing continued interest in putting up GEO satellites. So while you said it's in flux, we're still supporting those customers, and every business case is unique. I think LEOs offer high bandwidth, low latency. If someone needs high latency for a certain application or is agnostic on latency, like you mentioned for video, there's markets there. But I'd like to defer to the other guys who that's their primary business.
Indeed. Okay. Thank you. Erwin or Andrew? Erwin.
Well, I mean, speaking for Telesat, I mean, we have a fleet of 16 large GEO satellites. We launched 2 new satellites in 2018. Refreshed our fleet. We don't currently have any GEO satellites on order, but it's, I mean, our GEO business is still doing well. I think over time, a lot of the particularly two-way broadband IP traffic will almost certainly want to migrate to LEO, just because it's, kind of the very chatty nature of IP traffic makes the lower latency, just has a huge impact. We anticipate that broadcast will stay on GEO for long periods of time, probably forever. And there's other traffic, like Jonathan was just saying, not latency sensitive. There may be sort of backup services, some emergency services that are rarely used, but there if a natural disaster occurs or something, those types of services will likely remain on GEO. So we're certainly not abandoning the GEO business. We're not abandoning our GEO customers. And our plan is to continue to maintain and refresh our GEO fleet. But we do expect our company to at some point be much bigger in LEO. And we expect our GEO business to kind of stay flat and steady in the years going forward.
Okay, so staying flat and steady. Okay, that's not bad. Andrew.
Yeah, so SES invested in MEO because it created opportunities. At SES, MEO and GEO don't compete. In fact, they combine to create more opportunities, more options. We happen to see and are seeing growth in our GEO fleet, particularly around the networks business, over the next 5 years, particularly on HTS. But I think what the interesting part, to get to your question, is that when we combine our MEO and GEO capabilities and create new products, it pays off for our customers. The best example of this is where in our cruise line of business, the standard product is quickly becoming a combined MEO and GEO solution. That's something that we hadn't been able to do before. We couldn't do that if we didn't have a multi-orbit solution. So I see that bleeding into, in some fashion or another, all of our segments: government, commercial, etc.
Sort of pure hybrid strategy is
absolutely.
It's just a little bit of everything. Okay, yeah, it just begs the question: as you get this capacity in orbit and its price per bit is significantly lower, and there's a lot of it, kind of goes to the next question, which is the ground. Unless we all solve the ground equation, which seems like SpaceX and others are well on their way, because if you want to access non-GEO, you need new infrastructure. But regardless, Greg, back to you, Tag. And I think we have about 10 or 12 minutes left. So
yeah, okay. So thank you. Talking about latency, I don't want to be late to the party, but we haven't talked about 5G and the role of your systems, particularly the LEOs, in working with, being part of, providing components of the the next gen 5G and beyond. Can you talk a little bit about what your plans are there, or how you plan to actually capture those opportunities? Jonathan?
Sure. The relationships with the telcos is I think very much complementary. So the nature of our architecture is that servicing the remote areas where it's difficult for the telcos to expand into, or it's very costly, or they're unsure of the market penetration in those areas, we provide an opportunity to backhaul in those areas, so they don't have to lay fiber to support 5G. Yeah, so as 5G rolls out, we've been in discussions with many of the mobile network operators to see how we can complement them, and there'll be some developments on that shortly.
Well, just a little follow-up there, though, Jonathan. We've heard some words about the actual latency, the milliseconds. Mm-hmm. What's your anticipated system delay, and when it's integrated as in a backhaul situation, you're not going satellite customer, but you're going through a intervening network, which is whatever the cellular network is. What do you anticipate that will add to the latency of the 5G operations?
I actually don't have that data. I can say that we have been experiencing somewhere in the neighborhood of 30 milliseconds on average, with all the folks online now. A lot of it depends on where your POPs are, where your gateways are, but we're being challenged to bring that down much further as well. So always room for improvement.
Okay. Erwin.
Well, I agree. I think the 5G, growth in 5G is going to have a big, create a lot of demand for LEO services like ours. And I mean, the fact that it requires lots of towers and to serve more rural and remote areas, trenching in fiber to get all the way back to an internet access point can be quite expensive. We have our LEO demo satellite on orbit. We've done a number of 5G demos. We announced one, I think, in a press release a year ago with Vodafone, and it works extremely well. I mean, we do see latency on our system is, I think, expect all the LEO systems are, is variable. When the satellite's directly overhead, it's about 10 milliseconds. And then depending on, the satellite will fly off to the left or right, and then you'll hand over to another satellite. So there's kind of slowly varying latency. But our design is say we try to stay under 50 milliseconds, and 25-ish to 30 milliseconds is typical. And as Jonathan says, it depends on how many earth stations you have, where you put them, where your POPs are, how far they are from the earth stations, and that kind of thing. But I think mobile backhaul and 5G will be a substantial part of the Telesat LEO business.
Andrew?
Sure. So the answer to a quality 5G service or solution is certainly more than just a latency question. It's about throughput, it's about a variety of things. But getting to your question about latency, and I like to refer to the MEO constellation or the MEO orbit as sort of the Goldilocks zone, with enough coverage to allow you to go from point to point without complicated or risky interconnections, going straight down to headquarters location, straight down to a say a cloud location, and SES is taking that philosophy. We're trying to think about the entire link and how it enables the performance that the customer needs, whether that's 5G or a private network, and their ability to connect the sites that they need to connect, whether it be cloud or otherwise. So we've demonstrated recently the ability to do 5G links on our current MEO system. And so with the exponential growth and throughput that we're going to have on MEO, we are absolutely sure that it's going to make a meaningful difference in the 5G markets.
Well, that sounds great. To take us out of here, Christopher.
Yeah, I think the question I've got really is the classic keeping you up at night question, right? We've got a lot of execution that is happening. It has to happen. You know, what is it, hurdles, whatever term you want to call it. So you've got a lot to do in a short amount of time coming up here. This is, as I say, 21, 22, 23 is this time of this absolute execution for all of you. Where's the biggest concern? Is this, yes, funding notwithstanding, you've got to get things lined up, I assume, on some level, but you know, is it the ground? Is it distribution? It sounds like, Jonathan, you've got an unbridled enthusiasm challenge that you have to triage, as you mentioned. Where is it? What are you know, we've talked a lot about demand's great, business is great, lots of opportunity, but where is what aren't we thinking about in terms of hurdles and things that you really have to solve, problems you have to solve in the near to midterm? Andrew first.
Okay, you know, the program as a whole is on schedule, and we feel very good about that. If I just isolate one point in the overall program that requires a lot of effort, we recognize that from the very beginning. It is the terminal development, which is the enabling technology. SES is not in the business of selling terminals. What we have learned from our years of service in GEO and of course NGSO at MEO 03B is that having a healthy set of options for our customers to acquire simple, cost-effective, and readily available, and of course a diverse suite of terminals from various providers is key to that. I think everybody on this call is going to benefit from the investments that are being made around terminal development, whether it be flat panel or otherwise. We're counting on that. We're making our own investments to ensure that there's a good availability of all the kinds of terminals that are needed by our customers for all the applications, and that they're not locked into, this is key, I think, with an open architecture system like we're bringing, they're not locked into one source for getting that enabling technology to put their links together.
Okay, and you think that will be on time with Empower's launch later next year into 22? The opportunity, the customers that need to purchase grounds, it will be available.
Oh, there's no question about it. Let me be clear. The terminal availability and the terminal options will only increase over time, right? So we may not have, 20 different flat panel phased array and terminals on market at start of service. Those will come over time. But what we are confident of that is the business case is going to be supported by a variety of terminals that support our go-to-market strategy and our customers' needs by application.
Okay, fair enough. Back to ground, I would agree. Huge part of the equation. Thank you, Andrew. So, Erwin, where is your pain point right at the moment? What are you struggling with, or what's the number one thing you have to deal with?
Well, I think I'm sleeping pretty well, so I'm not losing a whole lot of sleep. I think our biggest challenge is program management. I mean, that we have quite a number of contractors. We have a lot of swim lanes in the master schedule. We are focused on getting lots of fairly complex satellites built. We got to get them launched. We're building, Earth stations around the world, which comes with technical and geography and international and other, considerations. We're building a family of user terminals, and we're trying to roll out, an aero, kind of an initial aero terminal, an initial maritime terminal, an initial terrestrial backhaul terminal, and so there's lots of contractors. We've hired, we've certainly more than doubled our engineering staff in the past year, and we'll probably double it again next year. So yeah, I mean it's program management, it's growth, it's effectively juggling a lot of things in the air and not letting anything drop. We've got a great staff. We've got a lot of experience. We're pretty good at it. So I say I'm not losing sleep, but we're certainly really focused on it.
I'm glad you're sleeping. That makes one of us. Thank you, Erwin. Crazy 9 months. Last but not least, Jonathan, you've got a lot on your plate. What are your big issues?
Yeah, certainly it's a lot going on, a lot of excitement. I think going into the various business verticals and making sure that we do it well and that we're setting the right expectations and we do right by our customers. So that making sure that the network is up and running as expected. Rolling out into a lot of different countries. And so getting that all orchestrated and making sure that we have all of our ducks in a row so we can provide the service in each of those regions is requiring a lot of effort. Ironically, the satellite portion is the easy part. And so that's done. We've essentially checked that box. I think coming up with, now that the service is up and running, making sure that we're addressing each of the markets in the right manner.
Yeah. Yeah, it seems like the satellite part, we hear that continually, that's the easy part. You don't tell that to an engineer, but that's the easy, right? No, of course. Excellent. It makes sense. Greg, back to you, sir.
I would love to explore some of the things you guys just raised, including market access issues that you alluded to, Jonathan, but I'm afraid we've run out of time. So we'll continue this discussion in the new year. In the meantime, I want to say thank you to all three of our panelists, Jonathan, Andrew, Erwin. You were terrific. Krista, you are just the best host any of these things I could ever hope for. And I want to thank APSCC and PTC, and to the rest of you that are sitting and watching. I enjoy the rest of the PTC'21 conference, and see you soon.
Mahalo for participating in today's sessions. There's just one more day to go. If you haven't had a chance to, be sure to participate in PTC's gamification, maintain the top spot, and win a prize from PTC. And don't forget to visit the PTC Cultural Experience, exhibit booths in the PTC Hub, and the Coral Networking Lounges.